general, look at the job Callahan has done with Band-Aids. He has done a marvelous job. Special teams. They've had moments where they haven't been great, but in general, particularly now that they've got the right guy back there to return punts, special teams now looks like one of the better special teams units in the game. Defense with Jim Schwartz. This coaching staff, guys, looks phenomenal.
They're doing things out of sorts and out of wits. Earlier in the show, we talked about them doing some different things. It's funny that Kevin Stefanski actually was like, you know what? I'm going to plan for this thing to come down to the last play. I'm going to play to my defense, and I'm going to say, okay, whoever has this ball last has the best chance of winning the football game. So he said in the second half, he's like, listen, we're not going to run anything to give them anything. I got in my back pocket about 5 plays. I'm not showing them 5 vertical routes or 5 plays the whole entire game. We're going to save that for when it counts. Because you notice that the announcer kept talking about it. They got to go downfield. They got to go downfield.
Said it the whole game.
He said it the whole game. And they kept running the ball, kept keeping it short. But that last drive, it was so masterful because it's difficult to call defensive plays. It's a thing to call defensive plays when you're at 14. But when you're up 3 points or you're down 3 points or the game is tied, defensive coordinators lock up. And then they say, well, it's a 50-50 proposition. I don't know if I want to play man coverage because it could be pass interference. So you're going to get a little cushion. It's a natural cushion.
And they took advantage of it.
And he took advantage of them on them 5 plays in the fourth quarter.
And to your point on the defense, how big was it that after, Jaylen Warren breaks the big run, right, 10-7. Then the Steelers had the field position edge the whole second half. And the defense, they gave up the 1 field goal. But after that, they had a couple of drives where the Steelers really only needed to go 10, 15 yards to get a field goal to take the lead. And they did not let them get it. They pushed them backwards. It was huge.
Mike, do your read.
I'll do a read. I'll send it right back to you guys. And I know people in the chat are asking for Joe Flacco. We'll talk Joe Flacco after we do Kevin Stefanski here. But FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. It is unquestioned, undeniable, and a UCSS fact, according to myself, Mikey McNuggets, the official validator of all sportsbooks in America. You can Google that. No one has more official validation on sportsbook than I do. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is simple to use, and they have everything you can imagine to bet on, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and much, much more. So visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to kick off the NFL season. That is FanDuel.com/UCSS. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL, an official partner of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.
All right, very good. One thing quick, I'm probably the only guy old enough to remember this. I know none of you guys will remember this. Maybe some of our viewers will. Watching yesterday, DTR wearing number 17 and Jerome Ford wearing number 34. I was having flashbacks to Brian Sipe, Greg Pruitt, and the Cardiac Kids.
Somebody said that in the post game. They were
Did they?
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 people said that.
It really did. It reminded me of 1979 and Brian Sipe pulling victory out of his ass time and time again. I think 9 times they trailed in the fourth quarter and came back to win that year. It was nuts. Incredible. And it reminded me a little bit of that yesterday in the fourth quarter on that last drive.
You know what I want to shout out to? I've been challenging these fans for about a whole half a year. Every barbershop I'm talking about the fans, y'all got a job to do. Don't give up your tickets. And from what I heard in the stadium, it was one of the loudest crowds that we've had in a very long time. I love you guys banging on them fences. Keep banging on them fences.
And banging on the seats, the floor.
Because I could hear that at home. I was getting chills. I'm like, oh, man, this is home field advantage.
And the crowd, after the
one terrible towel that got turned into a toilet paper.
Right.
And that was funny. After the Warren touchdown, the crowd for a minute was silent.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the Steelers score the field goal. You're like, oh, no, the momentum's starting to change. Yeah. But the crowd got back into it. The defense buckled up again.
It did.
And it was huge. And to talk about about Kevin Stefanski, because I know we're getting to Stefanski. Mm-hmm. G, you brought up the point, that. Did you guys see the movie Braveheart?
Yes.
Okay, everybody's seen
That's
Braveheart.
So
Jason, have you seen Braveheart?
Yeah. I was just watching.
You know that scene where they're talking about you can't win without horses, and these are right, and the English forces they're riding into their horses, and the Scottish forces are there, and the main guy William Wallace is like, hold hold, hold,
right.
and then the last second they pull out the tree trunks and they kill all the freaking horses. Yeah, they didn't actually really get killed in the movie. They would take care of. But that's what Kevin Stefanski did. Yeah. He was dying to throw the ball down the field. He loves throwing it down the field. And the whole game he's saying, hold,
exactly.
hold.
It's a great analogy.
And everybody was talking about it. Everybody on Twitter. Charles Davis was every third play was like, you got to throw it down the field. You got to throw it down the field. And then he released the dogs on the last drive, as you said. He said, now go. They don't expect it, and it worked.
Now, moving forward.
It was risky.
It was risky, and
Risky
you're right.
as hell.
I loved your analogy, too. This is a dangerous game
Yeah.
to play.
When
But
did you start scheming?
I know, we got two great
Why you
analogies here.
scheming
He
now?
goes to the barbershop one time this weekend, G, and he comes out
He's-
with movie
that's what I
analogies.
love,
They fed into one another. Like they were both exactly dead on
Yes.
the money. So here's a question now moving forward. So Joe Flacco's coming in.
Yeah.
Well, hang
I
on,
think-
before we get there,
Yeah.
before we go to Joe,
No, we're on Stefanski. We'll do Flacco after Stefanski.
Okay.
Yeah.
as you were talking about that, it kind of plays into what I said. I was talking to one of the players in the locker room, made me think of you, because I wrote after the game, extend them now. Andrew and Kevin should get extensions right now. They've earned it. But you want to bounce things off players and say, you think I'm crazy for writing this. And one of the players said, I think what he's done a really good job of is coaching with his gut. He coaches with his gut more than he used to. And it isn't just by the book analytics of we need to do this because this is what we're supposed to do. He understands the momentum of the game better. He relies on his defense more. He weaponizes the punter. He knows what a tool he has now in the punting game. And
Do you think that's on his own, or is that a shift in the organization?
no, I think it's realizing what you have.
Because I have
and the tools
noticed
that
the
you
exact same thing. What I've noticed is, and not just him, but league-wide, I'm noticing a big return to the old days. Not that teams are still more aggressive with their play calling, but I'm now seeing teams punting the ball more than they were the last couple of years in those midfield situations. And
Well,
I've
if you have a good
definitely noticed
defense, you're going to do it more often.
Listen,
Yeah.
that's the safety net. We called it Jim Tressel ball earlier this week or last week.
He was,
he played Jim Tressel had to watch that game at the edge of his seat, and when it was over, he said, "That's the best game I've ever seen."
I had to check Stefanski for a sweater vest. I see, he got a vest up underneath that belt.
There were
He looked
times,
like it.
there
The
were
punt
times
is the
wa-
most important play in football. That
There
was
were
Jim's
times
line.
watching
That's
this
right.
game that the offense, I was like, oh, this is like watching Brockport Division III football on offense.
It was
That's
bad.
what it looked like at
It
times.
was really the whole game. The offenses were inept.
Yeah.
They were both inept on both sides
Except
of
for
the football.
Jalen Warren.
I think the Browns outgained the Steelers. This is the first time this year. And the Browns' total offense, what was it?
260
250? 260?
Look it up right now, not off the top of my head, but it was not high. I mean, neither team. Offensively,
neither team got 300 yards.
We said offensive back a couple of years ago. The Browns continued their streak of outgaining the Steelers, 259 to 249, which means the Steelers now in 10 games this season have not outgained their opponent.
And they are falling apart. You got that, let's play that clip of, Najee Harris.
Najee
Did you guys
Harris
see this?
Najee Harris.
You got that, Mike? Can we play it for a second, then we'll get back to Stefanski here?
I do. Steve, you want to take tag? We're full. Hit play.
I don't know if you guys all saw this.
Do you think everybody has that team first attitude?
Do I think everybody has a team first on this team?
Yeah.
I'd rather not talk about the team, I'd rather just talk about me, my performance. If you don't ask questions about me.
Guys, we have to go back to Pittsburgh. Thank you.
You think they were 3-7 with that?
And I think that was probably someone from Steelers media relations
Oh, yeah, she was
yelling.
panicking.
That if you would have covered up the face and just given me the text, that's something the Browns players typically
100%.
say after a Steelers game. I had not seen that bull. That's fascinating.
Right? Like, they're 6-4.
They're
It
6
shouldn't be a
and 4,
disaster.
and they're the first team out of the playoffs right now, aren't they?
I think so. Yeah, I
So
think they
they're
are.
like,
They're not out of it at all.
Not at all.
But that looks
You know
awful.
what that's the signs of that we've been there. That's a sign of somebody being like, we ain't got no quarterback. When you ain't got no quarterback, that's like having your water cut off at the house. You can live without all the other stuff, gas, electricity, but you got to have water for a lot of things. And he's sitting there thirsty as hell being like, we just lost to the third string quarterback for the Browns who's a rookie. And we got our guy, our starting guy. Players like that do not expect to lose to guys that are third string quarterbacks. No. And that's what he felt they lost to.
And the Steelers, by the way, their talent on offense is not that bad. It's their quarterback stinks. I know everybody talks about the OC. I think their quarterback just stinks. The OC's part of the problem, but I thought Pickett stunk from the moment he came into the league.
The OC might be a product of the limited skills at quarterback.
Yeah,
Because, look,
sure.
you're not calling certain plays if you don't think you've got the quarterback that
Right.
can carry them out.
Yes.
And the one thing I wanted to ask on Stefanski and DTR moving forward was it was a dangerous game he played. No
Yeah.
question. But to your point, that's not going to work all the way through the
No,
playoffs.
No.
You're gonna
no,
have
but
to
he
open it
knows
up.
that. Yeah.
Do you think, Jay, he's more likely now to take the chains off of DTR, particularly the way he handled that last game drive, build some confidence? DTR was emotional when the game was over, guys. He was
Yeah, I like
wiping
that.
tears.
That was
I
cool.
love it.
Yeah.
But it also tells me that he was carrying a huge burden.
Yeah.
And I think those were tears of relief. Wow, I didn't blow it.
Yeah.
I don't know that necessarily they're going to take a lot of the chains off. You're on the road now for the next 2 weeks, and Denver's not an easy place to play, and the altitude and everything else. I think you're going to see a very similar game plan of keep it short, get it out quick, and keep everything simple, keep everything in front of you. We talk about it all the time. Screens, extra linemen, and play action, take a deep shot on third down. Now, the deep shot, I did expect it to come. I thought because the Steelers, and Tyvis and I talked about this at halftime, Tyvis said they're just going to sit on the routes.
They had everybody within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage the entire game.
Yeah, and that's why I think the Browns really, once Pittsburgh figured out they're not throwing it at all, that's normally when Kevin takes his shot. Once you pull him in, that's when he's going to take a shot deep.
But
get one-on-one on the outside
the run
to go.
game. The run game is going nowhere. If every team we play moving forward has all 11 defenders within 10 yards of the ball, you're not running it.
No.
Yeah, but even in the first half, they couldn't run the ball.
Should we make an elite joke?
No.
Or let it go.
Let's let it go.
yeah,
Here's what I want to say.
Yeah.
they only went down one spot in the yards per game.
Again,
class.
they didn't run the ball.
I'll
No,
say this.
they were short of 100 yards, which I thought they'd go over 100 yards for the game.
Give them
But
credit.
They're not running it. If the defense plays like this all year, the run game's over.
When you get Hayward back, Hayward is a dominant. I mean, this guy is supreme when it comes to stopping the run. Like Hayward is a monster. Like he's dominated for years and years and years. So when I saw what they was coming out in, they had 2-3 techniques and a nose. You're not running against that. That's almost like a 5-2. Like they had guys sitting up there. That's why I love the game plan so much, because he said, "Look, I only got 5 throws. I got about 5 plays, and I'm not gonna show you them yet. Our goal is to keep it simple and keep it close the whole game." And then we're gonna see how much. See the difference between
What a
Schwartz.
poker face, though. To hold on.
The difference between Schwartz and everybody else is Schwartz don't care. The same defense you're getting in, you're gonna get it in the fourth quarter.
Right.
That's why you can get somebody off the field in 14
It's
seconds.
aggressive. It's attack.
They wasted 14 seconds on the clock and gave the ball back to the Browns. That's how quick they got him off the field.
Why did we call a timeout at the end of the game?
Oh, okay.
Did Stefanski address that?
Well, that's the only criticism I have. So they called the timeout
With 19 seconds left.
and
No,
then
I
they
didn't ask
ran
him. Or 20.
and had to scramble to I didn't
spike the
understand why
ball.
they didn't reverse it.
I don't know
Why
why
didn't they
just didn't-
spike and then call the timeout with
I'm
3
with you.
seconds left? That was my only question
running
for
through my brain
Stefanski.
thinking, what good reason is
I didn't
there
understand that. Did you?
to use that timeout there?
Zach and I talked about it live. I don't remember, and I forgot to ask Kevin about it after the game.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
It was really the only
thought that was a
criticism I had.
mistake.
The other things, I thought
The challenges.
I would have challenged
But
the
you-
safety for sure.
We got to fire the coach who tells Stefanski when to challenge or not, because ultimately,
So what's weird
What
about
happened
that?
there?
He threw the flag,
but it was
Too late.
But then in the post game, he said like he was asking if it was challengeable, and it was, and then they decided like not to do it anyway. And we're like, but you threw the flag, so that was a
Yeah.
little bit confusing. And then the one that he did challenge on
That
the
was a
fourth
terrible
down spot,
challenge.
Yeah, I didn't like that challenge at all. It worked out, but
and
I
they
didn't
had
like
plenty of time because
Right, it
Kenny
was like a
got,
timeout on the field.
I know.
And I was texting with our subscribers. I'm like, well, they must have a really good feeling about this because
Right.
they had plenty of time to look at this one.
Yeah, I didn't
And then we saw the
understand
replay and it wasn't even close.
well,
I'm
I
like,
think
were
what
we
happened
looking at?
is he must have gotten confused because the players were jumping on the helmet.
Right.
Because Pickett's helmet came out and went backwards, and you saw players piling
Now,
on the helmet.
I'm
But Pickett
not
was
sure
already
about
way
this.
past the
Someone's
line.
got to check.
Yeah.
I'm 99.9%
with
sure
you.
that when the helmet
Helmet
comes
comes
off, the
The play's
progress
dead.
is dead.
Yes. I thought that's
And
what he was
so,
going with.
So I'm saying, he's going to challenge because his helmet came off.
Yep.
Because I think
Right.
it's a rule.
No,
Yeah, it
I
is.
was going to
It
bring
is.
that up.
Okay.
That is the rule, and I'm not sure, and I have to double check, and I don't even know if you could find this. When you challenge the spot, can the referee go back and retroactively
No.
respot the ball from where the helmet came off? Because they didn't blow it dead, but it may
I
be
don't
one
know
of
if
those
it's
things that-
challengeable. I don't know that, but I
Yeah.
do know this: if it is a rule. So I think it allows the replay official to look at that. When did the helmet come off?
But obviously
and
they
then determine
didn't-
that that's
yeah.
where the progress was stopped.
Side note on all that,
Yeah.
I didn't see it live, but I saw on social media, it's hysterical. Miles
Yes.
picking up the quarterback's helmet. Freaking hilarious to
is it
have
back to
Miles
him?
with the Steelers helmet. And it was, do we have the clip of that, Mike? Did you pull it?
I'll pull it in.
It
did
is
he do
I actually
hysterical.
didn't see it.
I mean, it goes back to the helmet swing.
Sure,
of
of
Miles
course.
holding the helmet, and like one of the Steelers players came up and grabbed it, and Miles is like, all right. But it was
That's
like,
great.
and he like, you just have to see the video.
Yeah.
He sort of like flinches
have
a
it.
little
Moment
bit
of
with it.
levity.
seconds.
in
Give me
high
To the
drama.
point on the
It is
replay of the
hysterical.
safety, it actually worked in the Browns' favor because
Well, the way it
they
played
got,
out, it did, yeah.
Right. It obviously
You're still going to take the 2 points in
sure,
the moment.
but had they gotten the 2 points, the Browns started that drive at the 50.
Midfield, right.
Maybe they would have started it there. You would have to go a lot further. Who knows if they would have scored
from the
there?
20, and
Right.
typically you can punt the ball 60 to 65 yards
Right.
in the air. So they probably would have been significantly behind the 50-yard line.
So it's not unreasonable to think that the Browns may not have scored on that
no, you're
drive,
right, and that was their
you know.
that was their lone touchdown
That's
drive.
right.
That was
Yeah.
it.
It was. Hey, I got the play, by the way, after Kenny Pickett lost his helmet. If you guys
All right, let's see this. Where's
There's the
95?
scrum. Here's Miles getting up.
Okay.
There's with the
Oh,
helmet.
look what I found.
Pull it back.
Hey, look, he's like, hey. No. I got listen. That's hilarious.
That is
pretty good.
fantastic.
I would love to have a mic down there.
That is
Yeah.
really good.
Nah, fam, you ain't getting no.
Listen, if you watch any game, there's always going to be a couple plays where you scratch your head about what the coach did. But I thought Stefanski
No, that was it
once
for me.
again was magnificent.
Marvelous.
Yeah,
in this
I
game.
thought he was really good. I just
Yeah.
didn't
And
understand.
I agree
why
with
he was
Jason
even there.
that you should extend them right now. I don't know that I'm in agreement with Andrew Berry, but I can live with
I
it.
think we can get into that later
Yeah.
on. But he nailed. Listen, I told you when they drafted DeJuan Jones, it's not about talent; it's about
Yeah.
maturity. He's been terrific. DeJuan has been great.
How much time do each have on their deals?
Kevin has 1 year left, so
Okay,
you would
cool.
extend him after this year.
Yeah.
I don't know Barry's off the top of my head, but I would imagine they run pretty close.
Okay,
to
I would think they'd
concurrent.
be concurrent too. Here's what I would say to that.
Keep it. I'm fine with it.
In the past, let more hay come into the barn.
Yeah.
Let's see. And here's why. There's no need to do it. Nobody can sign him right now. There's no race.
Oh, I see
to
what you're saying.
So finish the season. 7-3 now looks great.
Yeah.
I've seen 7-3 turn into 8-9.
And I guess
I'm not predicting that.
Why
but
I would do it now is because he has earned it to this point. And if it hits the fan and it goes off the rails, we just got done saying they're down to their 4th and 5th tackles. They don't have their franchise
No, I
quarterback.
know.
They don't. So if it winds up at 9-8 or 10-7, I still think he earns
But
it because
it's
of
not
all
whether or
that
not
they've
he's earned
overcome.
it. I've seen in the recent past, teams make emotional moves that they don't need to make.
Oh, the Browns do it all the time.
I know they do, but there's no reason to continue doing that. I thought when the Giants signed Daniel Jones off last year, I'm like, wow. Can't we see a little bit more of that before we decide that we're going to make this guy a franchise-paid quarterback?
Well, what you and
He
I
was in
don't,
the last year of his deal. That's a little different.
okay,
yeah.
that one's different,
And
but
and-
he played great. He played really
But
well,
the
and they went all in on him.
But Jay, the argument would be that Daniel Jones had one good year, and I think Jason and I would both argue that Kevin Stefanski
No,
has been good.
it's not
his
an argument.
entire time here.
I
Yeah.
don't know that you'd say his entire time. He's
I
had
would.
2 really good seasons. He's
Yeah.
had 2 seasons that they underperformed. So I can't say he was really good all 4 years.
But also,
All
you
that
don't.
being
I don't
said,
think they underperformed last
All that
year.
being said, I want him re-signed.
Yeah.
I just don't see the urgency to do it before this season's over.
That's fair, I guess.
I just want to see more
Yeah.
of it.
I just think that he's earned it now because of where they're at, and I fear that if it does unravel here at the end, everyone's like, get rid of him. I'm like, no, guys, look what he had to work with. Like,
No.
look what he's had to deal with, and look where he's got.
the good
to.
news
said-
is I don't think it's going to unravel.
I don't
here.
think. I don't
Yeah.
either.
I don't either.
Yeah. I don't
No, I don't either. And look, let's just let it play out. I believe it's going to continue. I don't know
Yeah.
that they're going to,
If I was
continue
him-
to win at a 7-3 rate.
I
But I
wouldn't
think
sign
they're
it.
going to win. If they win 11 games, they're home for 1 playoff game.
Here's the thing. I wouldn't sign it. Like, if I was him, I'd bet on myself. And if he goes into the playoffs and they get to the playoffs, what we've seen happen, he's going to be coach of the year. There's no other candidate, really.
I think
No.
Dan Campbell in Detroit,
Yeah.
Mike McDaniels in Miami, because he just won
Well,
a couple years
also,
ago.
What's his name?
Guy in
D'Amico
D'Amico Ryan's in
D'Amico
Houston.
Ryan's, yeah.
Absolutely.
There are some
that's
good
a
candidates.
good one. But for me, I would look at it like this. If they keep winning these football games with third-team quarterbacks and all these injuries, I mean,
he's certainly going to be
those
in the mix.
guys. There's no better job than what he's done. You take C.J. Stroud away. They're not doing that.
So that would be the urgency right there. If this guy goes on to win a Super Bowl, the price of Kevin Stefanski goes up dramatically.
Well, you're going to have to do it. You don't want to lame duck coach. You don't want a coach going into the last year of his deal with. So the time to do it is this offseason. You would do it this offseason.
Something this offseason.
Yeah. But to your point, and this would be the reason why you would do it now, if you're sitting in the front office and you're thinking, this team could go all the way. This team could go to a Super Bowl. The price of Kevin Stefanski with every game he wins probably goes up a little bit.
I don't think Jimmy's worried. If he has the right coach, I don't think he cares. The one thing I'll give him credit for, I don't think he cares how much he has to spend
money where it's not against the
cap.
Now,
the person you need to extend today is Jim Schwartz. I need him.
He just got here.
Well, it doesn't matter, though, G. If he wants to leave to be a head coach, no matter how many years you give him, he can leave.
I've asked around, is he a candidate? He absolutely is going to be a candidate. At his age, he will be a candidate. So it's a little too early to start talking about it.
I'm not going to worry about
consensus. That. I got a couple of guys who say, well, hell yeah, he's a candidate. Look what he's done. A couple of other guys have said age and previous experience as a head coach will work against him. And obviously you can see why that would be the case.
Teams like going with young coaches these days.
I know they do.
He left yesterday's game in sunglasses and an orange puffy vest.
Just chilling.
Strutting through the locker room.
He's a boss. There's no question about that.
Remember
He's a boss.
When the Browns, when the Steelers got the ball at 10-10 and they had it started their drive at the Browns 40-yard line.
Was that after the 25-yard punt?
Right, yes.
Yes.
And then the Browns stopped him. He was going nuts on the sideline. He was right deep.
He's the best.
He was using some words I'm not going to say. But
I remember that drive specifically because I think that was the one where we just dodged a big
Oh, yeah.
bullet.
That was his only bad punt all year,
After the 25-yard
really.
punt, I started thinking, again, you can beat me up for this, but 58 years of history.
Here we go. But it wasn't.
It wasn't.
And by the way, once again, a penalty flag on the final field goal, and for a moment you're like, oh no, and again it was against the other.
It pauses the celebration. I hate that. In the moment.
Yeah, didn't the Browns only get called for one penalty?
One penalty, 10 yards.
Game.
I wanted to point that out. That was on my game notes. One penalty.
That was it.
10 yards.
It seemed like a big one.
It was a big one.
Because it was right after the touchdown by the Steelers.
You start first and 20.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, my God, this is ending in a punt.
Because they had gotten a first down on that play, I think, or it got 9 yards maybe.
They did. They had a big pass completion that was right around the first down, and it came back. So it was really a 20-yard penalty.
And then he gave up a sack. Hudson gave up a sack right after the illegal use of hands.
So. But again, those guys did a good job.
For the most part, they did.
Bill Callahan, can we make a statue for an offensive line coach in Cleveland?
Pay him some more money,
I'm good with that. I think he's the highest paid position coach in the league.
Listen, I'm
non-coordinator. I think I read that too.
I'm stopping him. I'm sending a turkey filled with cash. Right for Thanksgiving. Both of them, Jim Schwartz.
Take one of those presidential pardon turkeys.
Yeah. There you go. That presidential power turkey is like that. That's a get out of jail.
Kevin said he's never rotated tackles like they did yesterday with DeWine.
That's very.
You know what I thought of? The situation dictated it, but I thought earlier this year I asked the question. We see it on the defensive side where guys are going with fresh legs and situational. Are we getting to the point offensively where we see that? It was because they had to. It was out of necessity. But I loved it. It's kind of when baseball, when you need to bunt, what do? You put the pinch hitter in that can lay down the bunt. When the situation calls for it, and by the way, when you put a guy in who's better in pass block and it's 3rd and 12, everybody in the stadium knows what they're
That's
doing.
That's why you're only going to do it in obvious
in extreme
passing.
situations,
right?
But I'm all for it. I would like to see more rotation of offensive linemen so they can have fresh legs. Because one of the things that we've seen in this, if we all can agree that we're moving towards a more defensive game, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that these defensive linemen, it started in Philly a couple of years ago as a trend, but now everybody's doing it. You watch that position more closely than anyone. To me, it seems like the rotation and the situational use of those guys, they're using more of them, and their play count is down, and that's making them
There's
fresh.
a lot of reasons. I think that's part of it. I think part of the reason this year it's so stark is because there's been so many injuries to quarterbacks.
Well, that might be because the defensive linemen are fresh.
Yeah.
In the fourth quarter, they're getting free more. They're going against somebody who's in wrestling. One of the great equalizers is you're both the same. You both expended the same amount of energy.
Right.
But in football, if the defensive lineman has played 42 plays and he's going against an offensive lineman that's played 60 plays, Give me the
But
defensive
that's always,
lineman.
not always, but that hasn't, I don't know that that's that much different than it was 3-5 years ago.
I don't know.
Well,
That's why I asked G.
Well, defensive linemen, you swap out guys like me, everything is getting downsized. If I played again, I wasn't fast enough. I ran like a 4.81. That ain't fast. That's not killing them. Now listen, if I switch to play left tackle, we like that. You're athletic, you play basketball. Hey, you can block some of these guys. Now you got guys running 4.4s. Like they've cheated the game. Like they got thoroughbreds.
But are they playing fewer plays in your
Yes,
mind?
they're playing fewer plays, and they're faster, and they're more in shape, and they got 2 or 3 waves of guys coming in.
That's
to me, the defensive line is almost just as important as a quarterback. Because if the Browns or a team that doesn't have a great quarterback can prove that if I can get top-notch defensive pass rushers and I can win with those guys and have a medium quarterback, you'll see a lot of other teams doing that.
Yeah, and on this team, Myles Garrett by far is the most important player.
Oh,
by miles.
Just
Miles, it's miles by miles.
The sack rate is 7.2% right now.
Yeah.
That's the highest. This is in the red zone. Jason, you made a point earlier about how teams are kind of giving up yards between the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stats that I found on this rising defensive prowess was particularly in the red zone. And one of the things that really jumped out to me was the sack rate inside the red zone now is at 7.2%. That's the highest since they've been tracking this stat.
Wow.
Most of these stats go back to 2000 because that's when the game really got, I think, slowed down for all these numbers.
I think this offseason is going to be huge for the offensive minds in this league to counteract
to make
what's
the adjustment.
happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Clearly what we're seeing is, in my view, it's just an adjustment to the offenses and not all, but most of the assets going toward the offensive side. Around 2018, but really around 2020, the league now is allocating more assets to the defensive side of the ball, and you're starting to see this renaissance in defensive philosophy. It kind of ebbs and flows. Once upon a time, defense won championships, but that wasn't the case in the late
we'll see if it's
teens.
going to be fascinating to see the playoffs this year.
What happens to the Kansas Cities and Philadelphia's when they run into the Cleveland Browns?
Right, but the thing is, those teams have good defenses too.
They do.
Not as good as the Browns.
The Chiefs' defense is really good.
Yes.
I think the Chiefs right now should scare the hell out of everybody.
Yeah.
Even though they're not
They have
doing
Patrick
what they
Mahomes.
usually do.
One thing real quick, and then we'll talk Joe Flacco. Offensive line play across the league has been down, and there are fewer and fewer healthy, good offensive linemen, which certainly helps defensive linemen get to the quarterback at a